In this video, I share to you 3 principles in learning how to read Biblical Greek in a very short period of time. Hello there, this is Ernie Aragon Jr. of Power Learning Biblical Greek. And aside from being a pastor and Bible teacher, I am also a learning coach and a memory coach. And if you are new to this channel, kindly click on the like button and the subscribe button below. Oh, and make sure that you watch this video all the way till the end. Why? Because I've got a surprise and good news for all of you. So you don't want to miss that. Now let's get on to our lesson for today. Now, in my previous video, I shared to you 6 things that you need to focus on if you want to learn and master Biblical Greek in a very short period of time. Now, the first tip that I gave there was to learn how to read as soon as you can. Now, let me say it again. Learn how to read as soon as you can. Now, I mentioned previously that over 97% of the students who are starting to learn Biblical Greek are learning how to read Greek in a way that actually slows down their learning. And that is why in this video, I will show you 3 principles that when you put them into practice, it will help you how to read out loud Biblical Greek in a very short period of time. Principle number 1, learn the sounds of the letters first and not their names. Now, this sounds counterintuitive, right? Because in a lot of Greek grammars and textbooks, they actually teach you the names of the letters first and their sounds at the same time. I have seen videos that teach you all the letters of the Greek alphabet in just 9 minutes. Now, knowing all of these letters of the Greek alphabet does not mean that you will be able to read words, sentences, and even paragraphs in Greek. Scientific studies on teaching and learning reading actually show that learning the names of the letters of the alphabet first actually slow down learning. And this is because the brain has to go through extra steps in reading. Now take, for example, this word here, cat, which is spelled with a C, an A, and a T. Now take that first letter C. The word C has little to do with the sound of the letter here, which is K, right? And the name of the letter A also has a different sound from how A is used here, which is A. And T, yeah, it's the same, T, T, but your mind has to go through the name first before you can pronounce it, if you focus on learning the names first. So for a beginning learner, if they first started out with learning the names first and then the sounds, they would process this word like this: C, K, A, T, T. And by the time you've went through all of these, a lot of them would have probably forgotten the sounds already. However, if you first learn the sounds, you call the first letter here as K, the next letter as A, and the third letter as T, the brain actually goes through less steps. They will just go, oh, K, A, T, cat, K, A, T, cat. They simply blend the sounds together and they would already be able to produce the sound of the word. They will be able to read. Now in Greek, unlike in English, the names of the letters are more or less consistent with their sounds. However, their letters have long names like alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon. So you can imagine the process that the brain has to go through if you first focus on learning the names. So for example, the word bed, spelled with the letters of the Greek alphabet, If your brain were to process this using the names of the letters first, it will be like this: beta, B, epsilon, E, delta, D. So again, though the sounds of the names of the letters are consistent with the sounds of the letters, because of the length of the names, it will make the person probably forget, or at least it will take them longer to process. But if you simply go B, E, D, bed, then you would be able to read very quickly. Okay? So that is why we learn the sounds of the letters first, not their names. And after you have already learned how to read, then you can learn the names of the letters. Okay? Because you still need to learn them in order for you to use a dictionary or a lexicon. Okay, principle number 2. Learn and master the letters by groups and not all at once. Now, it could be quite overwhelming to read all the different letters of the Greek alphabet all at once. So that is why it is best to learn and master them by chunks or by groups. In the science of memory, they found out that there is a principle of primacy and a principle of recency. Now, what do you mean by this? The primacy principle is this: if you are learning a large amount of information, you have a tendency to remember better what was introduced or learned first. That is the primacy principle. Now, the recency principle is this: you also have a better tendency or better ability to remember what was taught last or what was the most recent. So if you learn a large amount of information at a single time, it is likely that you will remember the first part and the last part, and you will miss a lot of what is in the middle. However, they also found this out, that if you divide the information by chunks and learn them separately, actually, you have shorter segments where you remember the first and the last part. So actually, you tend to remember more. So if this is a short segment, you remember the first and the last part of it. If this is another segment, you remember the first and last part of it. If this is another segment, you remember the first part and the last part of it. So you actually retain more. Now here's another tip. Studies show that memory is strengthened not through the repetition of input, but through the repetition of output. So it is not the repetition or the amount of times that you try to put the information in that matters, but rather it is the repetition and the number of times you try to retrieve the information through either writing or reciting or any other way. So the key here is to learn a small chunk of information, okay, store it, then retrieve it, recite it, write it down many times, then get another chunk, learn it, and then retrieve it many times, and then get another chunk where you learn it and retrieve it many times. That is the key to mastery. So in learning to read Greek, I actually divided the alphabet into 3 kinds of letters. The first group of letters are those which look a lot like the letters in the English alphabet, and they sound alike. These are what you call the friendly letters. The second group of letters are those that look a lot like letters in the English alphabet. However, their sound is totally different. And this is what I call the tricky letters. And the third set of letters are those that do not look anything like the letters in the English alphabet. And these are what I call the strange letters. Now, the good thing is that these tricky letters and strange letters are actually very few. So if you take time to learn them by chunks, by groups, it will be actually easier for you to read. Okay, we're down to principle number 3, and this is to learn how to sight read the common words, stems, and endings. Now, there are recent breakthroughs in reading nowadays where they actually teach babies how to read. What? Babies? Yes, babies how to read. And this is how we taught our first daughter how to read. Now, this is different from the first principle I shared earlier, which is actually called phonics, starting first with the sounds of the letters and then blending them together. This method actually introduces whole words and how those words are pronounced. So for example, the word bed, instead of going b, d, they show you the whole word and tell you that word is bed. This word is cat. This word is dog. And later on, the baby or the toddler's brain will actually decode on its own what the sounds of the individual letters are. It's amazing, isn't it? Now, sadly, this system of learning reading actually works best if you are under the age of 3. Now, though sight reading works best for those 3 years old and below, it still works for us adults. You actually practice sight reading without you being aware of it. If you are reading something in a language that you understand and in an alphabet that you can read, you actually are practicing sight reading already. When you encounter familiar words like and, the, dog, cat, bed, your brain no longer goes through each of the sounds of the letters anymore, but actually your brain is able to remember the sounds of syllables, of whole words, and even of phrases. That is why when you read today, you read very quickly. Your eyes just go over the words and it already produces meaning. And this comes by repeated exposure to these common words. And this is why it is wise to get a list of the top 319 words that make up 80% of the words in the New Testament and just practice reading all of them. You don't have to memorize them yet. Don't worry, there is another system to teach you how to remember all of these. But what we want is for you to just familiarize yourself reading them out loud. Another thing that I did when I was still studying Greek was I got my textbook and my workbook and practice read all of the different exercises there. I did not do translation yet, but what I did was before class, I would read these sentences so that I would be able to be familiar with them. You don't have to spend a lot of time a day practicing reading. You can just take probably 5 to 10 minutes a day. What is important is consistency and exposure. And if you do, you will soon be able to sight read words. So in summary, number 1, learn the sounds of the letters first and not their names. And number 2, learn and master the letters by groups or chunks first and not all at the same time. And number 3, learn to sight read common words, stems, and endings. So there it is, the principles that if you apply them to learning how to read, you will be able to read in a very short period of time. Now you might be asking, how do I put this all together? Where do I start? Isn't trying to come up with methods on how to put this into practice quite cumbersome and quite challenging to do? Now, the good news is that you don't have to do this by yourself anymore. Why? Because I put together a system that combines all of these different principles and synthesizes them into a single system that would do the work for you. And I created a video of the system. All you need to do is to watch the video and follow all the instructions there. It takes about 2 hours to go through the material, but at the end, you will be surprised that you would be able to read already. Now, I've had over 300 students go through the system, and the results were consistent and amazing when the students follow the instructions to the letter. So I'm placing the link to that video at the end of this video and also in the description section below. So there you have it. Make sure you watch and go through that video. And don't forget to like and subscribe in this channel. God bless you all.